Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Brass Junkies. I am your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by my beautiful, talented, and inspirational co-host, Lance LaDuke. Lance, how is January treating you?
Like a sack of Nick.
Well, there you go. To explain that inside joke to people. What were you were playing? Wait a minute.
Bass
were you
trumpet.
playing? You were playing bass trumpet.
See?
Look at that. You're even topical.
There?
I
Come
always
on.
underestimate you, and it usually works out fine. But every once in a while, it bites me in the ass.
Wait, what?
So, we were at the ITG in Banff. This was in 2008, and this was. I almost just said it was in Banff. That would kind of be self-explanatory from the intro. And Lance was a part of a performance that was like 40 or so. What was it? It was like a bunch of trumpets and you
And me, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And
I saw Jens, and he goes, I need you. And I didn't know how to take that. And then he explained that he needed me to play bass trumpet on this trumpet choir thingamadding. And so I said yes.
And it was actually it was cool, but there was Lance made me promise that I would come, and me and Chris Castellanos had hit the bar a little early and a lot hard, and so we were hammered, and we went to the concert, which was like packed, so we were just in the back. And the piece that Lance was doing involved like people blowing through horns and spoken word, and I'm like all about that stuff, but it was like Chris and I got the giggles, and we were laughing silently, but like to hold in all of that sound, and luckily there was no one behind us. We were leaning against the back wall. To hold in that much sound was like, it actually made my body hurt. And yeah, there was a line in there about a sack of Nick, and that was what like absolutely pushed us over the edge. And both Chris and I were literally crying. There were tears streaming down our faces as we silently looked like bowls of Jell-O that were in the back of a pickup truck. So yeah, there you go, man. Bass trumpet. So in our interview today is with Doug Rosenthal, who is he's like a bass trumpet expert. He's like the bass trumpet ninja of the bass trumpet world, but he's also pretty good at the trombone too. He's in the National Opera here in Washington, D.C., and he talks all about playing the entire ring cycle, which when we recorded this, he was in Chicago playing bass trumpet on the Valkyrie with Lyric Opera. And just what a fascinating guy. Like,
I thought
really,
so too.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, very, very thoughtful. We talked about some really serious stuff. We talked about some more lighthearted stuff. He's a fellow Northwestern graduate, so of course he's articulate. That doesn't really mean that happens. He happens to be articulate, but not because he went to Northwestern. He plays the trombone. He's shockingly articulate for a trombone player, actually. So says the tuba player. So, this is a really great. Doug is I can tend to overuse this phrase, but it's the best way I know how to put it. Doug is a really good human being. So he's just a good person, and you can tell that in his answers. And I love the fact that he busted on us because he said that we're too hard on ourselves.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. I never heard that before.
And then we got mad at him for saying it, and then at us. So it was good. It was there were a lot of layers to unpack. And Doug, actually, even though he is a famous trombone player, is actually a Patreon patron of the show, which is awesome. Like, every time that I go to the list and see all the people who I love, they're like family. There's like, and I see his name, it's like, holy crap, that's awesome. So yeah, really great. So he's been a patron for months. So maybe actually, I think over a year now. So which is great. So thank you, Doug, for that. We very much appreciate that. And we kept the conversation going as always. After the interview ended, the Patreon only bonus episode continued to roll, and we continued to talk about some really interesting stuff. So If you want instant access to all of the back Patreon-only bonus episodes, then you can become a patron for as little as $1 per episode, which is a grand total of $26 a year. If you go to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies, then you will get access to all of that immediately. And those are usually pretty darn goofy. So we usually have a lot of fun in that bonus episode. It's like morning show wacky kind of stuff. So although not always. So yeah. And then also tell them about the Papert people.
Hi, Papert people. Mary Papert School of Music at Duquesne University is a fine institution in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with a great brass program, music school. And I teach there. And so don't let that stand against your listening to the rest of this pitch. But if you're interested in finding out about all of the programs, the groups you can play with, the folks you can study with on each of the brass instruments, you can visit the link, which is in the show notes of this and every episode. And special thanks to Jim Nova for making that possible.
And for just being Jim.
And for being Jim.
Thank you, Jim, for being Jim. Yeah, there's only one Jim Nova. Thank God.
He's the Jimist Jim Nova of all of the Novas named Jim.
We also need to thank Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for the Brass Junkies. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model tuba mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke Model euphonium mouthpiece. All you need is our mouthpieces, and you sound just like us. You can skip the thousands of hours of practicing. It's magical. If not, Parker will give you your money back. I'm not sure if that's actually true. I might be paraphrasing. So you can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Dear Michael, I bought Lance's mouthpiece and I do not sound like him. Why is this? Please give me my money back. So, yeah, cheers. Anyway, we also,
actually, if he would write back, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Sincerely.
Yeah. Oh, you mean the euphonium player who put out an album of all weird music? Yeah, this is a problem. Why? So, so anyway, also, if you want to go to iTunes and leave us a rating, and even better than that, a review is the best way for other people to find this. I mean, let's be honest, this life-changing podcast. I'm not going to be hard on ourselves, right? I'm not going to say that it's just two jackasses yapping into a mic with really talented, inspirational people, which means that every episode has moments that are great because, well, in spite of us, because that will upset Doug, and Doug's a nice man, so we should not upset Doug. So let's just pretend I didn't say that. So Doug's in our heads, man. Doug's in our heads. Yeah, you never want anybody in your head, but especially a trombone player, especially a bass trumpet player. That's not.
Well, that's it.
Yeah, I still can't.
How would you even know? What's that sound? I don't know. It doesn't. What is it? What is that?
That's the sound of a second Nick hitting the floor. So, without further ado, let us get to the conversation that we had with trombone player Doug Rosenthal. Today on the Brass Junkies, we are joined by one of our Patreon patrons, which I think is beyond cool because he's also a famous trombone player. And this is Doug Rosenthal of the National Opera here at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. Doug, how are you?
I am just dandy. How are you doing?
I'm relatively dandy. Lance isn't. So, yeah.
I'm all right.
Lance doesn't like having trombone players who are better trombone players than him on the podcast. So,
which is all trombone players.
That is, and anyone above junior high school is usually,
Yeah, my kid's better than me. He's 15.
Yeah. So Doug, why don't you tell us where you are right now? Because that's cool all by itself.
Well, right now, I am talking to you from the city of Chicago, Illinois. I am looking at Lake Michigan, and I am here to play in Die Valkyrie with the Lyric Opera of Chicago.
That does not suck.
No, that does not suck at all. And you're there for a long time, right?
Yeah. So because they do multiple productions at the same time, the Valkyrie opened on November 1st and closes on November 30th. So I basically have been playing once rehearsals finished, once every like 4 or 5 days. So it's kind of like half vacation, and then I'll realize, ooh, I have a Valkyrie in 2 days. I should probably not do so much vacationing.
I should stop eating pizza, and I should buzz my lips into that metal cup again. So
I'm proud to say I've only had pizza a couple times this month, so that's tempting.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I don't live in. I mean, I went to Northwestern, so I lived in the Chicago area for 4 years, and then I didn't have the budget to be able to eat like a total idiot, all the time. And now I would, but if I was there for a month, it would be hard to not gain like 40 pounds. It would
Tell
be,
me about it.
yeah, it would be very, very challenging. So
Yes.
it seems like it's much more common for in the opera world for people to like get a leave of absence for a full month from their regular gig to go and sub and do something like you're doing. Is that my perception accurate?
That's a good question. So first I should say that this is the kind of start, no longer really start, of my 6th season at the Washington National Opera. And so I'm still kind of learning what industry standard is. And I would say for things like bass trumpet, which I don't know if I mentioned, that's the instrument I'm playing on Valkyrie.
Oh, gotcha.
They're, something like bass trumpet that's so specialized. I feel like perhaps that's more common for people to shuffle around for.
Okay.
I can't imagine someone like from the Met with the schedule that they have being able to take off a whole month. But it was just a combination of very understanding management and a good time in the season. Our orchestra. Here's the long answer to your question, which I'm really good at. So you'll have no problem filling up an hour with my dribble.
We'll edit half of it out, but anyway, go ahead.
I don't blame you. I'm sure people wish they could in real life. So our orchestra, we're actually 2 orchestras. We're the Kennedy Center Opera House Orchestra / Washington National Opera Orchestra. And so when we play opera, we are the Washington National Opera Orchestra. When we play ballet and musical theater and galas and one-offs and things like that, we are the Kennedy Center Opera House Orchestra. So it's a bit of a cumbersome existence, but our total guaranteed work is about 28 weeks, spread between early September and mid-June. So that means that there are points in the season that are actually quiet for us. Maybe there will be a show, a musical theater show, but that would only use, a handful to 10 of us. And it just so happens that October was such a time. And then the Washington National Opera did a Handel opera that had no trombones, unfortunately, or I guess fortunately for me. But and then I did have to take 2 weeks of ballet off. But other times in the season, this would not be able to work. So I think, and yeah, like I said, people back at home were very understanding that I wasn't taking a couple weeks off to go vacation somewhere warm. I was actually, doing something for the art form. So,
right.
Anyways, there's the long answer.
No, that's interesting. Well, and I didn't know. It's funny that I live here. It's just I'm not observant. So I kind of combined the 2 orchestra names into one string of words in a row. And I didn't realize that there were actually the 2 names for the 2 functions. So that kind of explains part of my confusion as to what the hell your actual name is.
Well, you're not alone, but I tell you where you can learn more about it if you visit our Facebook page at Musicians of the Kennedy Center Opera House Orchestra, or Twitter and Instagram at KCOHO Musicians. So
great.
There's my plug.
Yeah, there you go. Well, then I think we're done. Lance, anything else?
Yes.
No, I'm all good. Talk to you later.
All right.
We're both just. You were starting to before we went on. You were telling us that you were looking at Lake Michigan right now. Where are you staying with someone, or are you in a hotel?
So no, I'm from the Chicago area originally, and I have a family friend who lives in Lakeview.
Nice.
And the short answer is she has a spare condo. And
Nice.
So,
there you go.
She's not allowed to charge rent. She's not the condo association is such that she's not allowed to have renters. So I graciously agreed to occupy her apartment for a month and a half. So it's hard work, but somebody's got to do it.
Wow. So you have your own place that you don't have to pay for that's on the water.
True, but I am taking her out to dinner every so often. So that's
Gee, that seems fair.
Yeah, unless she is a miserable human being, then that sounds like a really good trade.
No, she's a wonderful family friend. Yeah. No,
that's awesome.
It was the right place at the right time.
That's great.
Dang.
So
there you go.
Yeah.
I think Lance and I both like, how do we get to be Doug for a week?
Right?
It's not all it's cracked up to be.
So bass trumpet. Let's peel that onion a little bit. So how
everybody's favorite failed military band instrument.
So what was your road to the bass trumpet?
Fella.
Well, it started in a past life when I did something really terrible. No, I guess the right way to start that answer is when I was a student here, I also went to Northwestern, and my freshman year was the last time that Lyric did the full ring cycle, and I went, and it was just life-changing. Like I'm sure it was for so many of us. It was kind of it became a bucket list thing. Oh, wouldn't it be great one day to play bass trumpet on the ring cycle? And so I by accident ended up in an opera orchestra. And we fast forward to spring of 2016, we did the ring cycle, and the option goes to Lee Rogers to play the bass trumpet. He's the principal trombone. Have you guys had him on this show?
We have not yet. He's on our list.
Yeah, good. He is. He's someone who should definitely be on your list. Mm-hmm. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, he's wonderful. So, anyways, no, he wanted to play lead trombone, and so then the option went to me, and I started on euphonium. Actually, all three of us in the Opera House started on euphonium. And I know Lee and I think all three of us still play. But anyways, neither here nor there. I wanted to do the ring cycle right. I thought maybe this was the one and only time I would be able to do this. So I got a bass trumpet from Tyne, and I made a trip to Bremen, Germany to procure it. And trip over my words.
That's a hard word, procure. Yeah, it's
procure.
Like you should.
That's for the diction coaches. And so anyways, we did the ring, and it just so happened that Jeremy Moeller, the principal of the Lyric Opera Orchestra, came over to play along with Dave Becker on contrabass trombone. By the way, they were the two who filled out the section. Dave Becker is a wonderful, wonderful bass trombonist. We were in Civic together, and he has been here, there, and everywhere. And can't say enough good things about both Jeremy and Dave. But they filled out the section for us. They needed a bass trumpet for their Das Rheingold in the following fall, and so they asked me to come over and do it. And same thing with our schedule and very kind personnel managers. I was able to come over and play Das Rheingold, and then so it's just sort of become a nonstop Wagner fest.
That's awesome.
You're like an itinerant bass trumpet player.
Yeah. So, and I guess I did forget too that I played bass trumpet before. I was bass trumpet number 2 on the Janacek Sinfonietta back in 2009. and it's a little bit like being the Christmas tree in the Christmas play, but
that's the gig I got to do with Philadelphia Orchestra. I've only played with orchestra once. Well, I guess twice, but with the same orchestra in the same season. And once was with the Janacek. And I was like,
yeah.
hey, man, let the bio show that I did it. No one has to ask what it was that I did. 45 minutes later. Hey, very good. Where's the check? See you later. Thank you for the resume fodder.
I mean, while you're playing, it is a huge kick, but there, like you say, there's a lot of sitting around too.
Mm-hmm.
So.
A fart in a hurricane. So let's back up a little bit. You said you accidentally started playing with an opera orchestra. How does one accidentally do that?
I saw an ad in the paper. No, I'm just kidding. But it was an audition. It happened. There happened to be a vacancy, and it was announced in. Well, I guess there was an ad in the paper, the International Musician, the Union magazine. And I was in the New World Symphony down in Miami Beach at the time, and taking every audition that I could, and that just ended up being the one that cracked the code.
And then did you have a preference on whether you would play with a symphony orchestra or with the opera orchestra?
You know, it's funny. I actually get that question a lot. I'm just content to have notes in front of me to play,
and
I'm content for people to not ask me to stop playing. So, I'm just as happy playing a Wagner opera as I am playing a Bruckner symphony. I'm not, it's I feel so lucky to be doing any of this. So,
well, now here's a potentially controversial question, but I don't want you to answer it in a way that would get you in trouble. So are any of your peers who are in the opera orchestra, do they feel like they didn't accomplish what they wanted to accomplish because they didn't make it into a symphony orchestra? If that makes sense. I mean, is it a secondary goal for some people who currently have it as their gig, I guess is another way to say it.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's wired differently. I mean, I will say there are some people who, and not just in my orchestra, but in, like, I'm learning here at Lyric too, there are some people who are just so at home in the pit, and they're so amazing at their instrument, but they love, and I love this too, they love being a part of the greater Gestalt whole of all the different art forms coming together. But yes, I mean, there are people who, would like to be on stage. I don't know if it's a difference in repertoire or just the fact that it's shorter services. but I mean, yeah, I think there are people that do crave the onstage life sometimes. But like I said, our orchestra is, we kind of have an on and off season. So a bunch of our orchestra subs with the National Symphony, the Baltimore Symphony. There are members of the orchestra, including Lee, who are in the Harrisburg Symphony, which is a wonderful orchestra.
Yeah, it is.
So good.
Yep.
And not just in the Mid-Atlantic region, but people find themselves all over the country on off weeks.
I think it seems like there are more of us that were raised on orchestral music than on opera. I think it's more accessible, possibly because it's not 3 or 4 hours long. So that it's so it seems like there's a lot of people who and I did listen to I had a recording of the Met doing Das Rheingold when I was a kid that I wore out. On a loop, but it's funny that didn't lead to me getting a lot of other opera recordings. I mean, and I had like tons of different recordings of every Mahler symphony and of every, not all the Bruckner symphonies, but the famous ones, and famous to low brass players, I guess I should say. But yeah, it seems like there are more people. When we just spoke with Weston Sprott a few hours ago, which will have been about a month ago now, as people are listening to this, in terms of when it went live. But it was a similar story to him, where he just kind of it ended up being that the code was cracked, as you said, in an opera audition. So how cool is it that you dreamed of playing bass trumpet in the ring, and that you're now like the guy that everyone calls to do that? Like in the entire United States, you're the dude. That's pretty cool.
Well, good things happen to bad people.
Yeah.
What can I say?
That's exactly what I was getting at, Doug. Thank you for putting a fine point on it. So as you mentioned a few minutes ago, the National Opera did the entire ring cycle, and
and you were at least one of the performances.
I was at the dress rehearsal for Siegfried, which was just incredible. It was the whole thing was like, it was really. It's hard without just stringing, superlatives all together in a row. But the playing, and don't tell my good friend Jeff Pilkington this, but I tend to gravitate towards the lower sounds in the brass section. Jeff played his ass off that day. It was phenomenal, but the low brass was just ridiculously good. And Pilkington's another guy that I just haven't texted him and said, "Hey, you're going to be on." So, but he would.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, Jeff. I mean, Jeff really. Sometimes you listen to horn players, especially the long call in Act 2.
Yep.
Sometimes you listen to horn players, and like, there's a part of you that you're rooting for them and you're keeping your fingers crossed for them, but you're just kind of taking a deep breath. And then there are other people like Jeff who just like, you just sit back and magic happens.
Yes.
And
yep.
And I thought Jeff was just awesome. And you know who else was awesome was I have to give a shout out to Seth Cook.
Yes.
The acting tuba player in our orchestra. Did you ever overlap with him at Northwestern?
No, in fact, I am the reason why he went to Northwestern, and the reason because we're both from Massachusetts, and I came back to Massachusetts to the Massachusetts Youth Wind Ensemble, which meets at New England Conservatory on Friday afternoons, and I went back to visit the conductor. And the conductor had me play something for the group, and then I chatted with Seth afterwards. And I think I was just about to graduate, because I think I'm like 4 years older than him. I think we just missed or maybe 5 years. And he said, "Oh, so Northwestern's a good school for tuba." And I said, "Rex Martin is everything. You need to audition there." And then that's where he ended up. So, which he has credited to that conversation, which I'm happy. Yeah, he sounds so good, so good. He's so musical. It's great.
For listeners who haven't sat in a room for days at a time listening to Wagner,
weirdos.
Yeah, they're missing out. I think it's both acts 1 and 2 start out with just absolute sotto voce tuba playing.
Yes.
This it's the and Seth accomplishes this like whisper, soft playing, but somehow it's like you don't know if it's coming from in front of you or behind you or from backstage. I mean, it's just like somehow it just takes over the whole room, and every time it gave me goosebumps. And so
it was
if
so
you're a tuba
good.
Player, you need to listen to Siegfried.
And it's and he did the super soft stuff like the best players in the world do, which is that it sounded like a great soloist playing at like just a healthy solo forte, but it was really soft. I mean, it's like, there was, it was just sounded like it was turned down. I mean, everything else was there, and it was just incredibly soft. Like you said, it was great. The whole brass section was just sounded absolutely superb. So it was great. So what was it like performing? I mean, talk about a massive undertaking. What was it like to perform the entire ring cycle, which hadn't happened in DC in a long time?
Well, it was actually that's right, and it was the Washington National Opera's first full ring cycle. I think it was sometime in the 70s or 80s. Deutsche Oper from Berlin came. I think it was them, and they did the ring like because people tour with the ring cycle somehow. But I don't know how that happened. But anyways, this is Washington National Opera's first ring cycle, and I hope it's not the last, because I have to say it was like you said, it was artistically such a success. I mean, the singers they brought in, and it was just the reception of it was so overwhelming.
Yes.
And I also know from management's end that they saw some positive things as well with the numbers. So I hope we do it again soon. But as far as going back to your question about what it was like, it is such a privilege to play. Pete Ellefson actually said if listeners don't know, he's the one of the trombone professors at Indiana, but previously was in the Seattle Symphony, and so he did his fair share of Wagner. They used to do the Ring every summer, if I'm not mistaken. Do you guys actually know if that's right or not?
I do not.
I don't know.
I forget, but they do it often.
Make it up.
So, anyways,
lie. You just
sure.
But believe it or not, we
I
don't have fact checkers here at the Brass Junkies.
we barely have facts, but we do play.
So you
checkers.
guys fit in with the rest of the news.
Yeah,
cycle.
yes, indeed.
Hey,
So-
now we're talking.
Yes.
Yeah,
It was 3 seconds too late.
No, it's never too late. That's validating.
Oh, goodness.
So no, Pete. Going back to Pete, he said before every time he would play Valkyrie, he would just think about what a privilege it was, and I would really have to agree with that. I guess on a practical level, you do have to kind of learn how to plan your fluids, your bathroom breaks, your meals. Das Rheingold is 2.5 hours without intermission. Act 2 of Valkyrie is 1.5 hours without intermission. Of course, an act wouldn't have intermission in it. Götterdämmerung Act 1 is 2 hours. So, you do have to learn what works for you. Everyone's different. But once you kind of know that, it's just an endless source of all the feels, for lack of a better term.
Right.
It's the exciting stuff that draws a lot of us into music in the first place. And I will say, going back, 10 minutes, when I forget which one of you said that we aren't really brought up on opera music. If you look at a trombone list for auditions, there actually is a bunch of opera music. Ride of the Valkyries, Hungarian March, Lohengrin, Gazzaladra. So it is. We've actually been studying more of it than we think we have, especially bass trombone players with all that stuff in Rheingold. So
I was in school with Dunkel.
Oh yes,
Yep.
Yes, yeah.
Yep, wasted a few brain cells with that gentleman.
Yeah, he's the bass trombone player of our orchestra, and he was the one playing the third trombone part, which had a bunch of little solos in them. So in addition to it being like the exciting stuff, it's also I'm such a dork with it, and it's every time we go through it here at Lyric, even though tomorrow will be, I think, it'll be my 9th performance of Valkyrie over the last 2 years. There's new stuff that I'm hearing around the orchestra every time, and it's just, I don't know how one person wrote this whole piece, and now it's sent hundreds, maybe thousands of musicologists over the next 150 years to try to piece it, break it apart and piece it back together. And it's just I'm totally rambling here. See what I mean about the lack of brevity? But
we're talking about Wagner. It would be weird if you had 5-word answers.
That's right. That's a very validating point. I'd be lying if I said that the bass trumpet part didn't give me the challenge to put myself out there, and it's an opportunity to it's an exercise in silencing that critical voice, especially towards the beginning of Valkyrie. And it's, you sit for a while and then you have a motif, and it's it flies by really fast, and everyone will know whether or not you hit it or you didn't. And when you're when you grow up in the Midwest like I did, the critical voice is high, and you can easily be self-deprecating, and it's stuff like this is good for me. Let's just put it that way.
Do you mind if I pivot you, because I was
Please,
poking
go for it.
through your blog, which I want to unpack more about that soon. But there's a really thoughtful and honest talk about what you just alluded to and how it relates to the Valsalva maneuver. Do you mind unpacking that a little bit?
No, that plagues so many of us, and I think it's a source of shame for a lot of people, at least people who don't talk about it and try to manage it, people who try to, tuck it away.
For just a second, do you mind giving your definition of what you mean when you're talking about the Valsalva maneuver? How do you define it?
Well, it's not as much fun as it sounds. This is a family show. I think.
Ish.
So,
family ever.
The short answer is it's a lockup. It's like you take a breath in, and then you go to play the note, and nothing comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And the more scientific answer would be it is part of the fight or flight response, and for some reason, psychologically, one is afraid to come in and play. And so the epiglottis covers your airway, and out of fear, and you are unable to exhale. And have you guys done research on this? I don't think even that's a complete answer. If
I was just sort of looking for an entry point. If somebody was unfamiliar with it, then I think you've explained that part of it, I think, really, really well. Now, would you kind of unpack the sentiment behind this blog post?
Sure. It was a little while, or I guess it wasn't that long ago, but I'm trying to think.
August 7th, 2017.
Thank you. Oh, right. So it was not that long ago.
Did you even write
It's a great blog post, and I do want to unpack more about how you set the blog up and what all is involved there. But the post itself is called "Maneuvering Away from Stigma."
Yes.
It has like 245 shares, so it's like pretty well shared, and it's a great little article. So with that as intro, now you've had enough chance to reread it to figure out what you wrote. I'm treading water here.
No. Of course,
it's
of course I remember.
InsideTheArts.com, Doug. It's your blog.
This answer's longer than the first act of Rheingold.
Yeah. No. Okay, so I was preparing for an audition, actually. The Santa Fe Opera Orchestra, which is a summer opera company, had a second trombone audition in late August, and I was having some issues with this Valsalva maneuver. And I actually was just kind of thinking back to, what worked for me when I got the job at the Kennedy Center, because I didn't have this issue then. I had it previously, but not then. And I realized that it was all psychological. If you can take a deep breath in, or any kind of breath, and say the word trombone, tuba today, you can play a brass instrument without locking up. It really is all in your head.
It's the same physiological maneuver, I guess, to pardon the pun, but it's the same physiological thing happens when you say a T or specifically a T word, yeah?
Yeah, T or D.
Or D.
But yeah, right. And so I realized that what worked for me back then was really acknowledging that this problem has existed, but not caring about how it was received by other people. Wow. And, it's funny. I remember taking a lesson with Jay Friedman when this first started settling in, when it was late in college. And he said something along the lines of, it's going to go away when you stop thinking about it. And of course, in the moment, I thought, well, okay, I can just magically stop thinking about it. Right, fine. But he was absolutely right. Once you accept that, yeah, fine, this might happen. But, if it happens, I'll put the horn down, I'll regroup, and then I'll take a breath in and I'll play. That alone seemed to really help and, be the fix, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, what also helped was I played some mock auditions for friends. This was a big thing, a big part of the New World Symphony when I was preparing for the Kennedy Center audition. Getting your friends together, simulating that experience of sitting in a room, having someone getting you. We even had a makeshift screen. Like we'd set up music stands, and if there was like a rug around or something, and we'd have one of my friends would be the proctor, who would do all the talking for me. And so I thought, hey, that worked back in the New World Symphony. How about now? And so I gathered a bunch of my DC friends, and we did the same thing. And it makes the audition room a lot closer to home base. And it's funny. I can think about several auditions, even ones I didn't, do that well in, where the audition room itself didn't feel intimidating, but it actually felt like home in a really sick way. I guess I'm tying a couple different concepts together here, but going back to the Valsalva maneuver, it just sort of wasn't there anymore. It's like I wouldn't. It was like a bully that you don't give attention to.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take you to have that realization?
Let's see. Well, it first started settling in, I would say, during my junior year at Northwestern. And that was 2006. I think it was, I had it for a good 5 years before I started, these are things that I've always intellectually agreed with, but never actually taken the time to make a part of me.
That makes sense. Yeah. You can know a thing and not do a thing.
Exactly.
Yes.
I was knowing a thing and not doing a thing. Yeah, totally. It was when I started getting ready for. I was preparing for the Utah Symphony and the Kennedy Center at the same time, and I was so fed up with this critical voice because I took an audition for the Atlanta Symphony previously and thought I was going to do really well. I was so well prepared and everything, and I just blew it. It was awful. Conveniently, or fortuitously, I was seeing a therapist in Miami Beach. Thankfully, not because of anything too traumatic, but I do know there were some other people studying at the New World Symphony who were seeing this person, and I took a psychology class in high school, was always interested in it, and I thought, hey, this perfect opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
He was giving a really very generous discount to the New World Fellows, so because we all needed it. So, well, yeah, I mean, you know how I mean. I think the world would be a better place if everyone at least got a consultation. But
what are you saying, Doug?
But musicians,
yeah,
Except for you
of
guys,
course.
of course.
Yeah, we're
It'll take way more than a consultation. That's your point.
We're woke, man. We're like the most woke podcast hosts ever. Or I'm paraphrasing. Yeah.
And modest.
Oh goodness.
Oh no, but it was with this therapist though that I realized that this whole concept of a critical voice, we all have it in our head, saying like, "Oh, you look ugly," or "You are about to miss this note," or whatever. So these problems I was having with the Valsalva maneuver were really just an extension of this issue, and so with that therapist, I learned how to manage that. And so fast forward a couple months, when I was preparing for the Utah Symphony in the Kennedy Center Opera House, I just had this random insight that my happiness is not dependent on playing in either of these orchestras. I could still be me. I could still be a happy, productive individual without having either of these positions that I was auditioning for.
It's a funny thing, you know. We improve because we look at the things in our playing that aren't up to snuff, and so there's this self analysis that has to happen. But it's the judgment of it, I think, that gets us into trouble, right? Therefore, I'm a bad person. I can't play this note, or I can't execute. Therefore, I'm going to starve, or whatever it is. You know, you fatalize the thing rather than keeping it at it's stimulus response, right? The stimulus is that note didn't happen, and then how I respond to it is the part that I can control.
Yep. I totally agree, and I also I would also have to add that I think you know, in general, the brass world can be a really supportive, encouraging, welcoming place. But I mean, how many of us, at least when we were younger, were in the audience for some performance of some big thing, and you know, whatever brass player had a big solo, cracked a note, missed a note, we would either chuckle about it, we would either express disappointment, we would, or conversely, we would like find it validating, or you know, it's like we would kind of harp on it. And at least when I would then go to play, I would be worried about people in the audience judging that. So I think
like the boogeyman,
and that should what the boogeyman is that what you said?
It's like the boogeyman.
Yeah.
Yes. Telling each other
absolutely.
Ghost stories.
Absolutely, and I think if each of us takes it upon ourselves to be supportive, encouraging citizens in the audience and of our colleagues, I feel like we'd all be doing ourselves a favor. I mean, fine, maybe not everybody brings a world-class performance every day, but you know, some people react kind of negatively about that, and will, you know, then after the performance, in privacy, kind of gossip about that performance. Oh, can you believe he or she did that? And I think even being a part of those gossipy conversations can creep into your psyche as a performer. And I think,
because it's based in a judgment. Yep. It's based in
it's based in an external, right? Yeah, it's like you're basing your self-worth and you're judging their self-worth based on what other people think about you or them, which is like the definition of what you cannot control. Yeah, that's not good.
And you know, I'm certainly not exempt for this. I've been a part of those gossipy conversations before. Absolutely. But I've really learned that it doesn't give me satisfaction, and it feeds into that critical voice that, frankly, the Valsalva maneuver is a manifestation of. So it's like nobody wins from one of those conversations. Right. So
I was gossiping about your bass trumpet playing for weeks after I saw Siegfried. So because I consider myself a little bit of an expert. So.
All right, let's take it out a level and let's talk about your blog. So
sure.
It's called what?
It's called Who's Your Audience? And it is an investigation into the art and industry of classical music.
And how did it get started?
So my very good friend, Drew McManus, who is awesome. I know, Andrew, he was on
the Entrepreneurial Musician. Yeah, and it's an incredible interview. What a story. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. No, Drew's wonderful. I've known him since I'm from Chicago. I met him here. And anyways, we've just been in touch throughout the years. And in addition to the art of music, I've also been interested in behind-the-scenes stuff. Everything from, unions, labor stuff to, operational stuff. And his blog Adaptistration is wonderful, and he also has this collection of blogs called Inside the Arts, and it's a collection of blogs from all corners of the industry. And he called me up one day a couple of years ago and said, "Hey, I don't have a millennial blogger. Would you like to be that perspective on Inside the Arts?" Because contrary to the people who buy into conventional wisdom, Drew actually believes in cultivating the younger generation and not just blaming everybody's problems on them, which I appreciate as a younger person. Although as time goes on, I guess I'm becoming less of a younger person. But
funny how that works.
So anyways, so I didn't really have a particular, I wanted to keep it broad. I didn't have a particular niche, I guess, shall we say. So I guess the art and industry of classical music is sort of like, kind of a vagary. But I do consider myself an extrovert. I do draw energy out of being around people. And I wanted it to be more people and interactive based. And so that's where who's your audience just kind of stemmed from this idea of, who am I talking to? Who am I connecting with?
And how do you define, who are you aiming these towards?
Honestly, anyone who's willing to read. Fellow performers, classical music lovers, first timers, people who claim to hate classical music but haven't given it a chance yet. Really, anybody. And I'm going on 2 years. February 1st will mark, February, the first Monday of February, because there's a new post the first Monday of every month. That's kind of how we figured, did the calendar. And so that will mark 2 years. And so over the course of these entries, you'll see that I do talk about things from a performer's perspective, but also I've tied in some social justice issues and labor issues. In fact, there was I did a 12-month labor of love challenge where I realized that, how we were just saying about 10 minutes ago, there's what you think, and then, what was it?
That you can know a thing and not do a thing.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. I knew a thing, and that was that I had solidarity with other labor unions and other labor organizations, and also other cultural institutions around, the DC metro area and wherever. But I wasn't actually showing up to their concerts. I wasn't actually attending their rallies or their, work actions. And so I made it a challenge for myself, the Labor of Love Challenge. Every month I went to one cultural event that where classical music wasn't the only art form. And I went to one labor event where the American Federation of Musicians, the Musicians Union, was not the only present organization. So, and it was really interesting. I totally rekindled I used to love theater stuff when I was a kid, and this totally rekindled that. I met some really wonderful people throughout the DC metro area who work for social justice issues, and I've even though the challenge is over, I've done the 12 months. I still keep in touch with these people, and I've formed actual connections with non-musicians, which can be kind of a challenge
weird
for me sometimes.
You mean like family?
Like, did you know that there are people that are done with work before 6:00 p.m. every day?
No.
Bobby Cochran.
There are people out there who don't have to work in the evenings. I have no idea.
How has your writing changed over these last couple of years?
That's a good question. It started out like more, not quite as formal as a 5-paragraph essay or something like that, but pretty, term papery. And I learned that it was more interesting and frankly more fun for me to be to first of all make it shorter, but also make it a lot more informal and a lot closer. You know what I would say? I've left the I don't do as much of the expository writing, and I do more of the creative writing, even though it's still expository stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you know, if we're finding categories here.
There's a parallel, I think, with the Valsalva maneuver and with what you're talking about in terms of finding your voice here as well. Do you feel that, or am I going a bridge too far?
That is really, I hadn't thought of that. That is really interesting. Because
No, I'm laughing. I'm laughing because Lance has
like,
a moment that's that insightful once a year, and you were here, man. He saves that for the Patreon patron guests. Yep,
that's it.
That's
no,
it.
Now.
You guys are so hard on yourselves, by the way. As a regular listener, I have to say, speaking of the critical voice,
we're exempt from all your psychobabble
other.
crap. I mean, this is fascinating, Doug. Yeah.
My therapist totally disagrees with you.
He's his own therapist, by the way. But yeah,
Yes.
The kids used to call it talking to yourself. But anyway, so I totally stepped on like a meaningful moment. That was good.
It was no. And that's very interesting because I used to. With that more essay approach, it was like, oh, I have to make this a certain way for people to both enjoy and learn. And so I can advocate effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, I have a thought. Let me tell you about it. Well, that's my thought.
That's pretty good.
So you are an openly gay musician in an industry where in some corners, industry, how about let's just say society, where in some corners of society that is that's nothing, right? People don't even think twice about it, and then we'll just say that there are other people that don't quite take that same approach. So I'm wondering if you could comment on what it's like being in a major symphony orchestra as an openly gay brass player in 2017.
You know, I have to say I'm so lucky or blissfully unaware that I
fine line, right?
I have not been subject to any examples of like true discrimination or unfair treatment from anybody at the Kennedy Center, or really I mean, even going back to my teachers. I mean, I came out just before college, and
can you tell me like roughly what year this would have been?
That would have been the summer of 2004.
Okay.
And it's a small world, and like we were talking about, people talk, and I'm sure it became. I mean, how many gay trombone players are there? Right? Not at least outwardly gay trombone players, or I should say openly gay.
Mm-hmm.
But so I've just never. I've been so lucky and or unaware, and I don't know. It just. I see these things on the news, and it just it breaks my heart what other people have had to endure, not just for being gay, but anything gender related, sexuality related. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, I do work with conservative people who, behind closed doors in their own privacy. I mean, they might think differently of me than what I think they're thinking at work, but behind closed doors, it's their right to do it. They're not they've never tried to change me or approach the subject with me negatively, and we've been able to make music and keep a friendly and respectful work environment together. And I think the world of these people, and so Yeah, I mean, they're not handing me their political buttons, and on the same token, I'm not handing them mine.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
But I'm so glad that you brought this up, because something I really wanted to happen in this interview was now actually, before I answered that question, what would you say you have some like high school listeners, maybe some middle school listeners to this podcast, or is this
I would say high school, yes, and maybe even middle school.
I
I
don't
guess
know.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm
Good
not
question.
really sure. Yeah, that's and there's plenty of college, but my guess would be more high school than middle school.
right? And I just think this is a wonderful place to point out that whoever you are, wherever you are, and however you identify on the gender spectrum, on the sexuality spectrum, um, there are people just like you who are pursuing careers in music.
Amen.
Out there, and I it's funny, when Andrew and I were emailing about this, I asked what topics would be covered, and right away you said that this was something that you wanted to talk about, and so I unfortunately don't have any big juicy stories for you guys.
That's fantastic news, though.
Yeah, that's surprising and awesome. Because it
see,
really is.
Yeah.
I'm of an older generation than yours, and I graduated from college in '90, my undergrad, and coming up through. I know. Tell me. Well, it's not that long ago, except that it's a million years ago in terms of a lot of the attitudes of the folks I was going to school with, and so it's very refreshing to hear you report what you're reporting, because I would guess that there's some folks that I went to school with that might have a different story to tell, and it's not 100 years ago.
Well, actually, do you mind if I kind of flip this and ask you a question?
No.
Something that I noticed, especially when DC was celebrating Pride back in June, something that's kind of lacking nowadays is institutional memory. And because things have gotten so much better for so many people, we've kind of lost touch with the the movers and shakers that have really made that possible.
Mm-hmm.
So when you guys were in these times that you're talking about, like, how gender wise, sexuality wise, how would you describe how things were compared to what you see now? Like, are you able to get, without, I'm not trying to ask you to say anything specific, but just generally, how were things then and how are things now?
I'll tell a quick, I just was watching the reboot of Will and Grace not that long ago. And there's an episode where Will is dating a significantly younger guy, and the guy has kind of no clue what it was like and just takes all of this for granted. And Will was like just shocked and was trying to help this kid understand the things that he went through. And I just found that to be a pretty it's just a fascinating time to be alive, that can be a thing, that you don't have to think about that. And I'll use that as an entry to say that, well, when I wouldn't say that I had tons of stories to tell, but I think that the atmosphere was the don't ask, don't tell. And so when I was in college, it was just sort of rumors, and there was suspicion about different folks. But I had a couple of close friends that I'm still close-ish with, that I don't remember having a frank conversation with them about it, but it was sort of an unspoken, understood thing. And I do remember more than one teacher or professor or conductor who just all of a sudden weren't there one year, and it wasn't really talked about why they didn't get reappointed, but everybody kind of suspected that it had to do with those issues. And then when I was in the Air Force Band, it was literally in the time of the don't ask, don't tell. And so this is a subject that it's hard for me to talk about without getting emotional, because more than a few of my friends developed AIDS. And one of them passed away. And it was largely due to the fact that it was an environment where you were discouraged from talking openly about it. And so this person didn't seek out the sort of help that they could have that might have caused them to be with us today. I mean, it's neither here nor there to say whether that would have happened or wouldn't have. But what I do know is that the environment was such that you weren't to talk about it. Don't ask and don't tell, which meant that this person didn't get the kind of treatment that they could have. And it's upsetting. I didn't experience it at all. I mean, it had nothing to do with me directly. So I can't begin to imagine what that was like and or speak for them or pretend to speak for them. But I remember I still viscerally feel this disgust over that atmosphere. So there were lots of reasons that I left the Air Force Band, and that was one of them. It wasn't in the top 5 because of the things that, career-wise, I was going in another place. But when you add that to the top of it, that was just not a place I wanted to be. And I don't know that it's still like that, and I don't want to say that it was overt, and I don't mean to throw anybody under the bus. I'm telling you what my experience with it was.
Sure. And isn't it funny that it wasn't that long ago that it was considered progress? And I guess in a lot of ways it sadly was progress, but that it was considered progress where if we, the rest of the world, would quote unquote let you be gay, then that was fine, but don't talk about it and don't put it in front of my face and don't advertise it, etc., which is I guess better than not, again, in quotes, letting you be gay, but it's like, wow, so we're going to do you that favor, but don't be yourself. And it's just because you're going to corrupt us or our kids or something like that. But even that was progress in kind of a twisted way from where we were at. It seems like things are progressing, but I always like to hear from people who are actually on the receiving end of either the progress or the lack thereof, rather than me being a straight white non-Jewish male who is allowed to just kind of blissfully coast through life if I so choose. So,
right. Wow. It's that. I mean, it is hard to believe that it wasn't too long ago that those things happened, and I'm so sorry for your losses.
It was, I left the Air Force 20 years ago, so we're talking 25 years ago. This is going on.
I mean, there are like entire demographics in certain cities that just don't exist because of HIV and AIDS.
Right.
And it's terrible.
It's terrible.
And it's not to get too political here, but this is why. I mean, whether if for you listeners out there, it doesn't matter whether your representatives have a D, R, or I next to their name on the TV. If they are supporting these discriminating bathroom bills, if they're supporting these terrible things in the workplace, legislation that's trying to take away marriage recognition, these things need to be stopped. And equality and respect need to be advocated for, and
shouldn't be a partisan issue.
Right. It should not be a partisan issue. So while it's not just in the political arena, in the age of being woke, please be aware that what your elected officials are doing do have an impact on everybody.
Yep. Well said.
That right.
Yeah, well said. So all right. So actually, the fact that we were going to explain the Jens bit is going to help this incredibly awkward segue from like really, really heartfelt, like as heartfelt as this podcast has gotten in multiple years to us just being jackasses. But that was like probably 12 minutes long, and that's the limit that Lance and I can go to not being jackasses. So that was a couple minutes beyond the limit. So maybe we're capable of more than I think we are, Lance. But anyway,
you guys really, I'm really proud of you. You really pushed yourself today.
You're welcome, Doug. So
it's usually related to bladder control, though.
Yeah. So Doug not only listens to the podcast all the time, but like we said before, he's a Patreon patron, which is, again, it's just awesome. When his name popped up on the email, I went, holy crap, that's great. But which was a while ago, but he actually was telling us, I was like, so you're straight on the Jens thing. And he was like, well, he said two things. He said, I don't really know Jens, and I also don't really understand where that comes from. so it dawned on me that we did explain this, but it was in like episode 10 or 8 or 7, or it was a long time ago. So I thought that we would take this opportunity to help explain why we are always busting Jens's balls. First of all,
well, and we also explain it to each of the guests before we go on, so the guest is at least in on it.
Yes,
but now it's occurring to us that maybe not everyone is.
That if there's like a Patreon patron who doesn't know, who literally pays us money for every episode, and they don't know, then maybe there are others of you. So Jens is a good friend of both Mr. LaDuke and myself, and he's a trumpet player, which means he deserves any abuse that's coming his way. But he, back in the day when Boston Brass would expand to big band at Christmas time, we would have a core group of musicians that we would hire, like say Jens, to help play, lead trumpet, and we would hire various people. Mark Frost we'd bring over from England to play bass trombone. And we would fill in wherever we were with like a local band for maybe like 2 or 3 shows that were, drivable. And there would be a mass email that would go out to everyone every year that would say, like, with the attachment of the PDFs of the music and what the clothes were going to be, and and the general the general schedule, itineraries. And Jens had a tradition that each year he would reply all, which he would claim was accidental, but he was doing that very intentionally to be funny. And he would then write a personal email to one, and it was always another trumpet player. So this was like a trumpet player busting on another trumpet player. And it would say something to the effect of, "Dear Fred, I just want you to know that I heard about the chop problems you're going through, and I just want you to know that I'm here for you, and let me know if if I can be of service to you." And then he would send it to everyone from Scott Hartman to, you name it, on all instruments all the way across the country. And so it was always quite funny, but then we got the idea that we were going to ask every single guest that we have on the Brass Junkies to comment on the chop problems that Jens is having. So A, he's not having chop problems, and B, he deserves this abuse because he used to dish it out a lot, and he's one of our friends, and C, he's a trumpet player, so we shouldn't have to explain anything, but A and B are also in play. So that explains the Pray for Jens campaign that we have now been going on for 2.5 years, because to quote Carol Jansch, boy, you guys sure can drive a joke into the ground, which I believe was my favorite moment of any Brass Junkies interview so far. And we were both like, you think? Yeah. So anyway, so what advice would you have for our dear friend Jens Lindemann in this time of need?
Well, first I have to say this reminds me of Save Ferris from
exactly, except less funny. But yes, it's just like Save Ferris, exactly.
And I have to say, Ferris Bueller's Day Off was my high school. John Hughes graduated from my high school up in Northwest, suburban Chicago.
There you go.
And so, anyways, any connection to Ferris Bueller's Day Off as well?
Awesome,
amen.
But now with that in mind, and
Bluer.
Gosh, the first hashtag that comes to mind is thoughts and prayers.
I did not see that coming, and in retrospect, I could have. There you go.
Uh-huh.
All right, so thoughts and prayers for you.
Thoughts and prayers. I don't want to give Jens too much attention right now. I'm more focused on what Speaker Ryan will be saying at the press conference.
He'll say something about the.
And I know Jens can rest assured that if anyone can provide change and progress, it's the legislature. So just hang tight. They'll sort it out.
Your chop problems rest in the hands of Congress, which means you're screwed.
Yeah.
There you go, Doug Rosenthal, ladies and gentlemen. I like it. Hashtag thoughts and prayers.
Tell the Bluer story.
We'll
save it.
Yeah,
save it. For
we were about to say we will tell that on the bonus episode, because we've actually gone long here, but no, which is good. This was super interesting, and I wanted to hear about the blog, and then wanted to talk about the social issues and stuff, and so those were very important things. So, could you talk to us in less than 30 seconds about what it's like to be an openly gay musician in 2017? Ready, go. Yeah, it's not really doesn't really lend itself to a time limit of a short. We're not up on hard breaks here, put it that way, since we're just yapping into mics with we don't have any commercials to play. So, Doug, this has been awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your support as a Patreon patron, and thanks for doing your thing, from the bass trumpet to being a great example for the next generation to everything in between. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you. I have to say that this podcast really sends out a really positive energy to a field that can feel kind of negative sometimes.
Well, that's very nice.
I hope more and more people keep listening and becoming Patreon.
There you go.
Hey.
Well, so we're going to have Doug hang on for the bonus episode for our patrons only, which are released in the alternate weeks after. Interviews every other week. Those will always remain free forever. And then we are also doing a bonus episode with a little bit more, which is usually a little bit goofy. The juicy stuff comes out in the bonus episode. So, for some reason the guests think that no one will hear that one, which is like less people, but it still gets out there. So anyway, but you let your guard down, Doug. It'll make for better content. So I think that's going to do it. So on behalf of both of us, thank you, Doug, and that will do it for another episode of The Brass Junkies. You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to help support the podcast in order to make more episodes like this one possible, please visit pedalnotemedia.com/donate for more details. Also, be sure to check out our latest recording, The Brass Recording Project, at brassrecordingproject.com. The Brass Junkies is produced by Will Houchin. Executive producers are Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.